Hello, this is David Heine, Aspect Art. Today we're in the Cobra Museum in Amsterdam, where they have a special show about a Japanese experimental artist named Nihokawa. Now, he experimented and painted from the 30s through the 80s. This is the first time he's been displayed in Holland. With us today is the curator of that show, Netel, and she's going to tell us a little about why he fits in the Cobra Museum and a little about his work. So join us now in the Cobra Museum for Nihokawa. Hello, we're here today at the Cobra Museum for an exhibition of Nihokawa, who was a Japanese experimental painter until recently, until, what, 85 he died?
Yes, he died, well, I always have to look myself, 83.
83.
And he was born in 1897, so he's a very old man in our opinion, because Cobra is the period about the Second World War, and then he was a man in his 50s. So when we talk about his painting after the Second World War, it is the painting of a man of 50 years old. And when you compare that with Karl Appel, for instance, he was then 28 or something like that. So it was an older man who did his traditional painting. It was the ink painting from Japan, and he combined it with the oil painting out of Europe.
Now, I notice as I look around the exhibition that there's a number of European influences actually on his work. Could you talk a little about what the content of his paintings and why they are so unique in the Japanese tradition?
Well, Japan met the European painting already from 1880. When there were magazines, they could learn from Cézanne, Matisse, Picasso later on, and well, everybody was, you could see them, but only with a picture. And then Japanese painters start to go to Paris. For instance, Mr. Satomi. He went there, he met Maurice de Vlaming, and they were very impressed. I think the way they used it, color, and they used material, the ink, the real paint. And they came back in the 30s to Japan, and that was the time Nihokawa wanted to paint, but he was ill. And he met Satomi, and then he was inspired also about the black lines of the Vlaming and of Rual, and he used it. And he made his own painting with it, and you can see it everywhere. You have first the color fields, sometimes it's done with oil, and then later on he has this sume ink, and he puts around it. And that's the typical Nihokawa style. And I have never seen it before, anywhere, not in Europe and not in Japan, this combination.
Now, he also chose, in many ways, traditional. You can see traces of traditional Japanese painting within the context of his experiments. Why do you think that he was using Western forms so often in his paintings as opposed to traditional Japanese forms?
Well, I'm not a specialist in Japanese art, but as far as I can see, Japanese painting has a lot of storytelling. They're telling erotical stories or something about heroic actions. That's one part of the painting. Then there's another part, and it's the scroll. And that's very special. We don't have that in Western art, but it's very beautiful. You make a small drawing, you do it and you can give it away. The way we use painting at this time, it's always framed. And this very intimate part of painting was away. So that's the second one, you can give a message to one another, from one person to the other. And well, that was very. Then there was another thing, that's the flatness of the Japanese. You can see it in woodcuts. There's no perspective. And I think Japanese art was on a point. It was in the 30s when you had to choose. Either you did it the traditional way, which was supported by the government, or you didn't do it, and you were looking what can tell painting more than it did before, more than a story. And I think what we learned from the Japanese woodcut to make a painting flat and don't use perspective, the Japanese, especially Nihokawa, took from the Western part to look really at the material. And that's very strange too, but because we do that also with a Zen gedachte, Zen idea, we like the way Japanese use material. They look to the wind, the air is going. They have well, they look at everything. But that's strange. In painting, that wasn't true because they told a story with the painting, and now they saw that the European looked at what is color. When I paint a face, it doesn't have to look like a face. When I see anger, I make it color red. When I say fear, I use green, some kind like that. And then you have another more, conceptual way of using colors and really look at it at a different way. And that's it's the same with the material. It's the real oil. It's a substance you have to... that's different, and you can do their experiments with it and tell something which isn't a real story. From a man walks into a shop, buys a cigar or something like that, but you can say something about light and darkness and the strijd between them.
Now, as a materials painter in Japan, did he have other contemporaries, or did he belong? We often think of art groups, and here we are in the Cobra Museum, which was probably one of the last great strong groups that can readily be identified. Did he have a group of fellow painters in Japan?
Yes, that was the same as in Amsterdam, especially after the Second World War. When you wanted to exhibit as an artist, you had to belong to a group, otherwise there was no space. And so he also started a group, and it has a beautiful Japanese name. Because I can't speak Japanese, I always forget it, but it's on the text board over there. You can look it up. So he started the group also, and has been doing a lot of organizing with it to have exhibitions after the Second World War.
Now, this is a large exhibition by some standards. Is he a popular Japanese painter, well-known in Japan itself?
Yes, as I said, I'm not a specialist in Japanese art, but as far as I can see, when I look up at catalogues about Tokyo Museums of Art, sometimes he is mentioned, but he is not like, say Mondrian, Rembrandt, and you always expect that when you have an overzicht exhibition here in Holland. But it's also the first time his work can be seen here in Holland. And he had an exhibition in Belgium when he was alive. It was in the 70s, but that was the only time you could see his work here in Europe.
Now, the exhibition itself, when you, again, like I said, you look around and you see a number of different European influences. Did he borrow these ideas and make them part of his, like Rouault, or I saw Picasso or Chagall and many of them. Was this a conscious borrowing from the West and making it Japanese in its own way, or was he just painting for painting's sake?
No, I think he was very interested in the relationship between East and West, and how you can learn from Western art and make something different, but also still Eastern art. I think that's his theme in his work. But and then there were some people he liked more than other ones, and I think he was very interested in Picasso because you see all these faces. But I'm really not completely sure about it.
Now, this exhibition is on display at the Cobra. Could you tell us how long it'll be here and when the people can come and see it?
Yes, it's a pity. It's at the end of June. It's already disappeared, this exhibition. So the last day will be the 25th of June. So how long do we have? More than 3 weeks to see it in the Cobra Museum.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Okay, you're welcome.